It should be. Democracy should be full participation in the right to vote, the right to determine leadership, the right to be a leader, and equal protection under the law. It also means equal access to economic resources. So you have the equal right to vote, you have equal right to education and to health care and the jobs and job training and contracts. And there must be some sense of proportionality when there is a multicultural arrangement. So for example, you can have a one person, one vote democracy, and the majority can always subjugate the minority democratically. But in Iraq, for example, we fight for a proportional democracy where we identify Shiites, Kurds, and Sunnis and have a shared participation. That is the most rational form of democracy. And the US and UK could learn a lesson themselves from what they're proposing as a democracy in Iraq. Well, it's easy to say Mandela because he has the strength that grows out of suffering his way into power and not scheming his way into power. He has the moral authority, he has the believability, and he is not someone presented to us out of a paid commercial called TV ad. He comes out of a situation where his scars give him stars. And he was tested under fire. He came out of a hateful situation not hating. He came out of a very violent situation not violent. He came out of a situation where he could very easily have chosen to affirm his blackness at the expense of oppressive whiteness. But he chose to affirm black and white together in the vision of a society of reconciliation over retribution. I mean, those are the real qualities of a great leader. And I often say that what made Jesus the Christ and Joseph in the Bible and Dr. King have something in common. They were all minorities with majority visions, or inclusive visions. And Mandela represents that inclusive vision, not just limited to a kind of nationalism. Terrorism is very much capable of destroying democracy. Democracy is capable of creating terrorism by suppressing and locking people out. When people can freely express themselves and fully participate, they can accept winning and losing if they're participating. But often subjugated people who cannot express themselves, who are in the margins, who are locked out by some form of technical process, manifest their anger through some terroristic form, which is a form of warfare we must all reject. We must also understand it well enough so as to stop its continuing. There's a huge growing gap between the few who have more than they need, who live in the surplus, and this growing gap between those who live in the deficit. This gap between the surplus culture, the deficit culture, must be addressed not with walls around the surplus culture, but by bridges to those living in the deficit. So that one way to fight, one way to recruit for terrorism is say, look at what they have and look what you don't have. Look at what they have that belongs to you. Look what you don't have. And here they are living in a plush zone, and here you don't have drinkable water, or you have crippling diseases, abounding poverty, and so people began to fight back. So in some sense, way you can mitigate the misery with democratic opportunities. And so if democracy represents participation, if it represents benefits from participation, that's exciting to people. But if there's some democratic scheme to lock people out, then it in fact exacerbates tensions, and therefore it may manifest itself as terrorism. One of my concerns today in this in the free world is that we become so committed to violence as a way of solving problems. The proliferation of weapons, not just the nuclear bomb, but the semi-automatic weapons, the the M16s, the rocket launchers, the AK-47s. The U.S. military reported about 3 weeks ago 192,000 AK-47s missing. Where are they? Are they in the U.S., where you now can sell them legally? Are they in Iraq? And if so, whose hands are they in? AK-47s. In Britain and the U.S., that's very concerned about inner city crime and killing. In both of these countries, which is so parallel in so many different ways, in the urban areas, basically where people of color live, jobs and investments going out, usually going out to cheaper labor markets. It may be China, or it may be India. So jobs are going out, investments going out, leaving people without real economic options, and so drugs are coming in, often a narcotics-driven economy for many people, and reinforced by guns. But they don't make guns, manufacture guns in the city of Britain, in Liverpool, in Manchester, in Brixton, as the case may be. Where are the guns coming from? Where are the drugs coming from? If you have troops in Basra or in Baghdad or Fallujah to stop the gun flow there must be some commitment to stop the gun flow here. It seems as if there's a shrug of the shoulder on guns flowing in U.S. and flowing in U.K. And in fact, what can the official police in UK or US do in the face of an onslaught of semi-automatic weapons? There's no defense against them. So the evil that we see may not be a plane, this time landing in some building in New York. It may not be some train blown up. It may be some concerted effort to use semi-automatic weapons to mow people down in ways that there's no defense against it. So in our democracy, there must be some rational thought process. The more I look at the inner city crisis in these countries, basically abandoned people of color for the most part, but not limited just to people of color. There's also a class dimension to this thing as well. That we have an interesting plan for Iraq I find fascinating. It's the 3-point plan. Plan A, use your troops to stop the flow of weapons from bordering countries. Stop the weapons flow. A, you cannot reconcile democracy with unleashing of weapons. Secondly, use your political strength and military strength to fight for an inclusive, proportional democracy. So everybody's included. You don't, in England, you can't leave 15% of the population out, leave them in the margins. In Iraq, we include Sunnis, Kurds, and Shiites. Here in England, we leave out large segments of the population. Thirdly, they have a plan for reconstruction. There are no unemployed Iraqis. They're building bridges and roads and schools and sewers and hospitals. If that were the same commitment to inner city Liverpool or Bristol or Manchester, you'd have young people at work building and growing and hoping and yearning again. So I say that the crisis that we now have within our democracy is that there are too few included getting too much and too many getting nothing or little, and therefore you have a tension that begs for a remedy.